Take the North is here. Yes, we are here with you. Welcome into the podcast. Thanks for joining us wherever you may be joining us from. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you. Along with Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune and The Score, I am Mark Grote of Chicago Sports Radio 670 The Score. Dan and I both cover the Chicago Bears for a living. We both have other assignments that we often tend to as well, but we are here for you talking about the Chicago Bears. And Dan, it happened. The Bears couldn't hold us off any longer, and Caleb Williams finally spoke. I happened to be doing a show in Wrigleyville yesterday at the Brick House Tavern just outside of Wrigley Field with my friends Layla and Marshall on The Score. So instead of being out at Haugh Hall, I just got to hear the drama unfold, getting the news, and I do wonder what your reaction was and what some of the other media members' reaction was when it was finally decided that, yeah, we're going to do the smart thing. Whoever idea it was, whether it was Caleb or Bears PR, media relations, or the front office, somebody finally came to their senses and said, we got to do this now. Enough with the June talk.
Yeah, no question about it. And I think it was welcome for everybody involved to just get this out there and get it done with and get it over with and now turn the page, as so many in our audience and other audiences have suggested to get this behind us. But it couldn't be behind us until Caleb himself spoke on it. And so I thought it was a good opportunity yesterday to have that conversation. And I do call it a conversation because this was not an interrogation. This was not what some in the Bears fan base feared, that we were going to be on a full-fledged attack of QB1 for past transgressions and wrongs that he may have committed against the organization. It was just an opportunity to understand where he was at, where he's currently at, where his headspace goes from here. And I thought it was a good 15 minutes. And that's the point here, Grote, is it was 15 minutes, right, of everybody's time to get this all tied up, cleaned up, and get everybody moving in the forward direction now.
Yeah, and so we'll give you full closure today. And I understand, too, like what you're saying, the reaction to this, like most people have been scared to death to stop at this point and talk about Caleb. Like it's a pain. I admit it's a painful part of the process, but it's not a part of the process that was in any way, shape, or form worth skimming over or skipping or any of that. And hopefully after today, we don't have to reference this point much more. I'm sure it will continue to pop up. So in the name of that, you said that he spoke for about 15 minutes yesterday, had the opening statement, then took every question possible from you guys, the media out there at Haugh Hall, which was good. So I kind of, like, from my perspective, from having gone back and reviewing the press conference and everything that was said and everything that was done out there at Haugh Hall yesterday, I came away with a few key topics that you and I have been discussing, and then you and I have placed some import on in terms of the relevancy of this story. So I want to go through those particular moments here with you, Dan, and we could quickly discuss them and then get into some Ben Johnson. And then eventually we will begin to turn the page in our second segment of the podcast today, where we talk about the backup quarterbacks, and then we'll eventually get to some actual notes on the football and the OTAs, which is hopefully where we are headed, Dan, for the rest of this offseason program and training camp, for that matter.
Yeah, and there's only so much left, right? And so we're cleaning up some of the storylines and advancing forward here. The full team mini camp will be next week. That'll be mandatory. But yeah, let's walk through the back and forth with Caleb on Wednesday afternoon.
Let's start with one of the things that, I think everybody needed to know, whether you, I don't know how much urgency you had in it, but the idea that he wanted to go to the Vikings and play for that front office and play for that head coach. And Caleb Williams cleared it up, said he went to the Vikings, liked the Vikings, but eventually loved the Bears more. Here's Caleb Williams in his words about that whole Vikings thing.
That went down, all that was said. Yeah, I had a good visit at the other place, Minnesota, with Ken O'Connell, good staff and all of that. Obviously, he just won Coach of the Year award and things like that. So obviously, good staff and things like that. But something that keeps getting lost, something that keeps getting I think not being addressed the way it needs to be is the fact that, I went on that visit first, came here, and then after I came here, I went back home, talked to my dad, and, all of the things that were supposed to be these big things that everybody's been talking about recently. One never happened in the sense of they were all thoughts. They were all ideas. And I think if you're in the situation, I think if your son or daughter, anybody is in a situation to be in that position, I think you think about all of the options and, and you look at it, the history and the facts and all these different things. And, those are thoughts that go throughout your head in those situations. So, all of those were thoughts. And then after I came on my visit here, it was a deliberate answer and deliberate and determined answer that I had is that I wanted to come here. And just like Ben spoke about.
A deliberate and determined answer. I do like the way he said that. So he's been basically, I could sum up a lot of this here, Dan. It's like he's saying right there, yes, I did it with confidence and authority, and this is where I wanted to be. To sum it all up, yet Caleb is saying, all that happened, all that you heard, yeah, my dad was trying to circumvent. Yeah, my dad was looking for different ideas and avenues. Yeah, I like Minnesota, but I liked it here better, and I'm here, and that was the decision I made, and I made that decision strongly.
He defined these as ideas, as his words, good thoughts, bad thoughts. They were hypotheticals and there were deliberations, but let's be clear, there were serious deliberations. Now, by the time we got through the pre-draft process, those deliberations had given way to Caleb's desire to come try to rewrite history with the Chicago Bears. But we can't just gloss over the fact that, again, as you and I have talked about, the Bears were 3 steps from the final level of quarterback hell, which was having a generational talent tell them, I don't want to play for you, right? Like, so that you can't just go, oh, well, nothing to see here and move on. So I'm glad Caleb addressed it. What you just played right there was part of a 3-minute and 54-second opening statement. I thought that Caleb was, for the most part, smooth and forward-looking and everything you would expected. But I did think he was a little bit nervy when you listened to him talk, particularly early on. In that gathering, a little bit nervy, maybe a touch embarrassed that he was in this position right now to have to clean up some of this mess. But again, all in all, a productive 15-minute back and forth that gets us closer to finality with this, with the understanding that there is still a process here of getting this whole project moving in the right direction, which it didn't move far enough in the right direction in 2024 during Caleb's rookie season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And yeah, I like the word that you used, nervy. I noticed that in your Tribune article as well. Nervy. I was like, okay, that's a new way of saying.
I did run that by a few other reporters in the room and said, am I being fair with this description? And everyone was like, oh yeah, I felt the same thing in the room, that it was just a little bit, like you were in the principal's office and you were trying to explain why you got there.
Yeah.
And we've all been there once or twice in our life, and we understand kind of how you try to communicate in those situations, and it's not always super graceful and eloquent.
Yeah, he straight up admitted it. He just said this is a distraction. And the insinuation was, I know that I've caused this distraction, and now I've got to distinguish this distraction, and hopefully this is the last time I have to deal with it. So that was the number one cut that I was excited to hear. Another thing that we've been talking about, and then everybody's been talking about, is the film study. And basically it made it sound like Caleb Williams did not know how to study film at the NFL level, that he wasn't getting help from the folks that were running Haugh Hall last year and the guys that he was supposed to. This is now Caleb on the film study. I got to admit, I don't know how to describe this, but I laughed out loud when I heard Caleb describing this, because he seemed genuinely amused. You're about to hear the answer. I think he got a kick out of the idea that we thought he couldn't watch film, or maybe it was back to Dan's assessment of him being a little bit, how do you put it? A little embarrassed, a little nervy on this one?
Yeah. And we'll go ahead and listen to it, and we'll talk about it.
Let's we'll all interpret this cut right here.
Yeah. That was a funny one that came out. It wasn't that I didn't know how to watch film. It was more or less the sense of learning shortcuts, in the sense of, or not learning shortcuts, but learning ways to watch film and be more efficient, learning ways to, pick up things better. And so that was a funny one that came out, that in context and how I was trying to, portray it, didn't get portrayed that way. So it wasn't that I didn't know how to watch film. I was trying to figure out the best ways and more efficient ways so I can watch more film, I can gather more information, so that when I do go out there on game day, that it's, I'm that information that I gathered through Monday when we got back, all the way up to, whatever day the game day is. So when I get out there, I can gather it, I see it, I can react. And it's not me sitting there thinking so much about, the rules and these different things. It's more of a reaction game at that point in muscle memory.
What do you think, Dan?
Yeah, look, I think that Caleb tried to clarify there and say that, look, this was about trying to become more efficient with my film study, to become more refined and understand exactly how to be more dialed in and learning how to pick things up better in a way that translates over to the football field. That process is going to be ongoing. We've documented it many times that the Bears did not put a veteran tutor around him during his rookie season. It's here now in Case Keenum. And I know we'll talk about Case in a little while, about his value to Caleb and his value to this very specific topic in Caleb's development. But look, I think the quarterback, as a young player with a lot expected of him, maybe has some initial early difficulty of admitting where he is not elite yet, right? And one of those things may be some of the things that we're talking about, some of the things that we've heard from inside the building for the better part of the last 6 months in terms of refining work habits, understanding what the QB1 lifestyle in the NFL looks like, understanding how to watch film. It's hard to tell people, hey, I know I was the first overall pick in the draft and proclaimed as the city's savior and presumably destined for great things in the NFL, but I turn on the film sometimes and I'm not quite sure what I should be accomplishing with this particular film study. That's hard to admit. It's hard to admit privately. It's harder to admit publicly. And I think that's some of what you heard in Caleb's laughter there. Again, if we're going to do this as a large portion of the audience has suggested with forward-looking eyes, okay, the next step is becoming better at watching film, about leaning on your offensive coordinator, your quarterback's coach, your head coach, your veteran mentor, QB2/3 in Case Keenum, and getting the help you need to do that process more efficiently and better. That's next for Caleb. And that's going to be all a part of what 2025 is as he tries to create that pathway to success.
Yeah, and the honeymoon continues because he is kind of having fun with it a little bit yesterday in terms of the Ben Johnson effect and the effect that we're all talking about, the honeymoon that's going on with the media and Ben Johnson. I think the same thing is happening with Caleb Williams, probably to a higher degree because it sure feels like relative to last year's coaching staff, which maybe part of this too is maybe gave Caleb a little bit too much credit in terms of what he already knew coming into the NFL. They're human beings too. It gets in their head when they hear generational. This guy doesn't need anything. Just get him in here, give him the full playbook and let him run. I think that was part of what the previous coaching staff was guilty of.
Part of it, but I would also say that you and I know enough from within that locker room last year, from within things that we've heard from within the organization, that there may have been a hesitance to challenge Caleb Williams as much as he needed to be challenged in moments.
Yeah, well, that's true. I think that goes with it, though, doesn't it, Dan? Doesn't that go right in hand with what I just said? That they didn't feel like they needed to challenge him, or and I understand what you're saying. They were afraid to.
Correct. There's two different things. And they're both part of the same pie chart, right? Yeah. Felt like he understood. He's got it. No worries. We can leave him alone. But also oh no, he doesn't quite get this, but we don't know how to do this in the manner that's most productive, and being too delicate with it at times, which is where you heard some of the cries from within the locker room, not only for Caleb, but for others about that whole accountability topic and really understanding the stakes here that are involved for everyone. A lot of people lost their jobs last year because the Bears did not go where they were supposed to go. And so I don't think Ben Johnson is going to shy away from the understanding of what the stakes are. You're at the poker table with the chips pushed in, and you can't be shy in that moment. You've got to be understanding of what game you're playing. That will be important going forward as they get there. And I know we're going to we've got a Case Keenum cut for later in the show. That's going to tie in and marry up with some of the things we've talked about here and some of the things that the Bears organization has talked about. So we'll save that for a few minutes up the road as we continue down this Yellow Brick Road as we continue the Wizard of Oz theme.
Every cut I play, we're getting closer to closure, closer to fine here on Caleb Williams for now. So I have one more cut from Caleb Williams, ladies and gentlemen. And this is the question very succinctly asked. You will hear the question, does your dad speak for you, Caleb Williams? Because this will inform us on what happens in 3 years when Caleb might be looking for a second contract. Here's Caleb Williams on that.
Does your dad speak for you?
No. No. actually shut my dad down quite a bit. He has ideas. He's a smart man. And so I listen, and I always listen. I'm very fortunate to be in this position in the sense of, playing QB, but also very fortunate to have a very strong-minded father. And so, we talk very often. It's like my mom and my dad are my best friends. And so, being able to, have conversations with them to understand that everything they say also is, portrayed on me. So I think that's the part of it. But other than that, no, I mean, I'm like I said, I'm very fortunate to have a father, that's super strong-minded, that's always there, always wants the best for his kid. And I think, any of y'all that has a kid or, anything like that, a niece or nephew that you love so dearly, they try and help and you try and help and put them in positions that it's the best position that you can. So that's all he tries to do. But no, definitely a grown man. And, I shut him down quite a lot just because, in season, out of season, it's something that you have to do. He cares so much about me and, my future. And we've been along this journey so long together that, all he wants is the best for me. And so if anything happens, he's super high-headed, and it's more of like, all right, like, go ahead and go away, reset and things like that. So, love him to death and things like that. And like I said, super fortunate to have him. But, we have talks about it, understanding that, it's a right place and the right time. And then, there's times where it's not.
Well, he shut him down, Dan, but that also says to me, with everything that he said in between, you got to listen to that. My best friend, they are my parents. I'm lucky to have them, all of that kind of stuff. To me, that says that, yes, Dad will continue to have influence on Caleb Williams's decisions. And it wasn't until the last second that he shot Dad down in this case.
Yeah. As a loving but heavily involved and strongly opinionated father myself, I empathize with Carl Williams in that moment and being like, sorry, son, I just, sometimes you get really, really into things and and you've got to let your kids take care of their own business on their own time. Right. And I think Caleb has kind of made those pleas and said, several times yesterday, I've shut my dad down in terms of, hey, look, like, you got to understand everything you say to anyone is going to be reflective of me in some way. And so let me handle some of this myself and we'll work through it together. And I love you. And there's no tension or riff here, but like, got to be a grown ass man here. And so let me be a grown ass man and take care of some of this business myself.
Yeah, no, amen to that. And we'll see how that can, we'll see what's next. We'll see, I really hope that the Bears get into a position and that Caleb is in a position where everybody eventually agrees that Caleb deserves the next big contract. Hopefully we hear him being the highest paid quarterback in the league, but I have a hard time believing that his dad won't be making heavy suggestions at that point as well. But hopefully both father and son have learned that if they don't want this to be a distraction, then maybe just tell Dan and I about it. Maybe just tell us and we'll put it through the proper channels.
Yeah, we'll put it through the pipeline and right here on the Take the North podcast. We'll roll through the bullet points.
You're damn right. All right, let's start to get on the field a little bit here.
Can I give you one more piece of closure on this just as we go through this? Because there was I did ask Caleb yesterday, which about the concerns he had going into the draft and how when you have a rookie season like he had with as much disruption and interruption as there were, that those concerns prove valid and justified. So how does he get himself in the proper headspace going forward to trust that he's in good hands inside the walls of 1920 Football Drive? His answer was interesting to me because he didn't really give an endorsement of the Chicago Bears when he answered. He talked about his own production in his rookie season and how that gives him confidence that he can produce through turbulence. Okay. He talked about the love he has for teammates and the way they see that when the game's on the line. Okay. But ultimately, this also is going to marry up Grote with how well he connects with Ben Johnson, a process that we'll talk about here shortly, that is ongoing. And I think the early returns is that Caleb is seeing how demanding and he used the word laser focus to describe Ben, and that's going to rub off on the starting quarterback. And so that's part of this now is these two getting on the same page, which I think is really, really meaningful. But I also think it's going to be more difficult than people on the outside realize, particularly when you have such a type A demanding coach as Ben Johnson working with a quarterback who's going to need a lot of work to get where he ultimately has said that he wants to take his career. And so that process is still ongoing. And I think that's part of again, that forward-looking lens that Caleb wanted to put on this. It's like, okay, so now we're looking forward. We're using your own words and focusing on, as he said, the train choo-chooing forward or choo-chooing ahead. By the way, in context of Caleb's speaking, I hope he never says the word comfy or choo-chooing again. But if he does, I'll take it and roll with it. But I think you'd agree that this current early growth of the relationship between Ben and Caleb is fascinating to observe. And we've got a long way to go before it becomes a finished product.
Well, right. Yeah. I think that's the key part to it because, I mean, honestly, at least early on, I had no reason to believe that Caleb and Shane Waldron had any kind of issue or that he would be an issue because we heard it. Hey, we're excited. We're looking forward to this. I love working with Shane. And I get it. This is a different coach. It's a different animal. We know the resume, but yes, it still needs to proceed and we will see where it goes. As good of a start as it feels like it is off to, but I will remain a little skeptical and cynical until I start to see the real progress, once we get to training camp and maybe even in mini camp and some of these OTAs. But one of the things, Dan, that they will definitely be working on with Ben Johnson because they've been very public about it. It came out in the Albert Breer article that one of the, couple things that the Bears want Caleb to work on is pre-snap procedures. They want him to work on body language and staying in the now. And here's Ben Johnson with more on that.
There's adversity that's going to hit every team, every season. You don't know when it's going to happen. We might lose a few games. We might have some turnovers, and yet just the wherewithal of we're steering the ship. We're going the right direction. It's not woe is me. We are going to take everyone around us, we're going to elevate them, and we're going to look to forge ahead to what's next. And so it's not dwelling on the past. It's not whether it's last season, last play, last game. We learn from it, we grow, and we move on. And so our body language needs to reflect that as well.
What set of examples have you given Caleb about body language of quarterbacks that you work with, that you've seen, that you want him to kind of reflect? And how do you come about kind of this realization as you were studying up on him coming to this job?
No, we early in the process, we sat down and we watched some tape from a year ago, and we talked it through. It's like, do we really want to? Is this what we want to look like or not? And we come to an agreement. No, it's not. And okay, we learn from it and we move on to the next thing. So, it's body language is a huge thing. Demeanor. We don't want to be a palms up team where we're questioning every. No. That's, to me, that's a little bit of a sign of weakness, and we don't want to exhibit that from anybody on the team.
Dan, I love that he made that public. I mean, that is not something typically you're going to hear from a head coach about the quarterback, and specifically generalizing it is one thing. Like, hey, we all got to be up, we all got to be ready, get on to the next play. But he's telling the quarterback to straighten up his demeanor a little bit on the field. So I think that's about as pointed as something I've heard from a head coach of the Chicago Bears in a long time.
I recall in 2014, Brandon Marshall talking about his own efforts to not be a palms up guy. So to hear Ben say, we don't want to be a palms up team, it triggered some past PTSD from Haugh. But I think there's some very valid coaching points in there of understanding how to project command, how to project confidence. And we all have the images from various points during the season where Caleb was a little slow to get up from a sack, or he'd go to the bench between series and he'd be slumped over on the bench. I just threw my pen because I was so dramatic with my exaggeration of what he did there. But this is part of it, right? This is all a part of the process of becoming a standout starting franchise quarterback in the National Football League. And so that's what I mean when I say this demanding, detailed nature of Ben Johnson is going to take some getting used to for Caleb Williams, because it is going to apply to everything. It's going to apply to how you run a huddle. More on that in a minute. How you carry yourself, how you study, how you apply your practice habits, to getting ready for the game. All of these things lead up on the runway to game day to helping you play better and helping you, deal with adversity. And Ben is not going to let any of this slide. And so you're very right in playing that clip, because it is a point of emphasis among a binder full of points of emphasis for Caleb to dial in on in year two.
Dan, you were very impressed yesterday with the second string quarterback, the third string quarterback. That'd be Case Keenum, the former Minnesota Viking. What stood out to you about Case Keenum yesterday with the Chicago Bears at the lectern?
I think we got about 12 minutes with Case. This is a guy, Grote, that has played for 8 different organizations. He has changed teams 10 times. He has been around the league. He's seen a lot. He's in his late 30s, and he comes in here with a ton of enthusiasm. And I think that's what resonated with me the most was this was a guy who sat down with Ben Johnson back in the spring for what he said was supposed to be a 15-minute conversation. It turned into 2 hours, and he was like, I want to be here. I want to be here at House Hall. One, because he instantly clicked with Ben and that they see offense similarly. They talked ball in a way that triggered both of their passion. And when you feel passion in a room, like you recognize it. And that's what I felt from Case Keenum yesterday was the passion he has for being with the Chicago Bears, the passion he has for being with Ben Johnson, the passion he has now for mentoring Caleb Williams. That resonated with me, and the perspective, the wisdom that you can feel from Case Keenum was missing in that quarterback's room a year ago. We talked about how young that room was. We talked about how Ryan Griffin was supposed to fill that void and clearly didn't. Well, it's filled now, and I think Case Keenum's got that perspective to help lend some things to the process. We're going to play a clip here in a second relating to some of the things that he sees in Caleb in this ongoing bridge that he has to cross from his rookie season into becoming a more seasoned veteran. You're going to hear some things from Case here, as we teased earlier, that marry up with things we've talked about and things that the front office and the coaching staff have talked about. Here's Case Keenum.
What jumped out immediately was just effortless arm talent. I don't know if I've seen a guy do that as a young guy. But just being able to take sometimes what defenses give you and not make this crazy big, off schedule play. Letting those plays kind of come to you. And I think he found some spots of that last year. And, he's settled into this offense and how Ben sees it and trying to get on the same page with him and Press and Deck and JT trying to all come out of that quarterback room and seeing the defense the exact same way as the play caller has been. So, what we're trying to accomplish and how we're trying to accomplish it, along with the footwork, the operation before the snap, defense recognition, all those things combined with leadership. So, just that's quarterbacking. I mean, it's an art and it's a science and it's all of that combined. And there's 100 ways of getting the ball down the field. But in the end, I think there is some common threads, some common themes of being a pro quarterback, what it means day in and day out, showing up here, being ready to do your job. And, that's representing himself, his family, an offense, a coaching staff, the team, an organization, and a city like Chicago, where it was such a storied tradition of players and coaches and really sports teams. It's incredible that he's got a chance to do that, and he's going to do it for a long time.
Grote, I found that to be a very pleasant challenge and almost a indirect pep talk from Case Keenum to Caleb Williams on hey, look, I'm just going to explain to you what it's like to be in this league, to be a professional quarterback, to understand every single day and every single moment what's required of you to be ready to do your job. And he goes through some of the things there, from footwork to pre-snap procedure to defensive recognition to leadership. Like, this is a long checklist, right? And that's why I always remind people of how hard it is to play this position, because the demands are so voluminous and so heavy. And I think Case has a grasp of that, and he's going to be able to stop Caleb when that checklist isn't being checked properly and be like, wait a minute, man, like, I need you back on track here. And here's why, right? He's got this track record for 2 seasons with CJ Stroud in Houston of understanding, okay, I had to lead from behind and see how a young quarterback, acclimates to the league and acclimates to this demands. I look, like, you can learn a ton from these backup quarterbacks that are veterans in the locker room. I recall in the early days of my time on the beat here in Chicago, learning so much about that position, this sport, the entire lifestyle from Josh McCown. And I felt similar vibes from Case Keenum on Wednesday. I'm curious if that resonated with you as strongly as it did with me.
Yeah, it did. And I'll tell you, everything you said, I agree with. The line that really stuck out to me, and there's a lot here, is take what the defense gives you.
Yeah.
That was part of one of his checklists. And look, I think that's a discipline that Caleb is still trying to learn. And quite frankly, the expectations we all have for him too, because we all saw the quarterback at USC who was so good with the off script stuff. And he had it his way, doing what he wanted to do against college defenses. And what he has to know, what Caleb has to get through his head, and maybe has wrestled with this to some degree, is, yeah, man, there's going to have to be a little bit more structure at the NFL level. That, yes, we do want the off-script stuff. We want to do with you what makes you special and supposedly generational. But Case Keenum saying, take what the defense gives you, is everything to me, because it's a discipline that we're all wrestling with when it comes to this quarterback, Dan.
You may only have 4 or 5 well-presented opportunities to do that off-script Superman stuff, right? And you have to know when those are, and the other 65 snaps you take have to be very, very, as I think you use the word disciplined. Like, you have to understand, okay, this is what we're looking at here. This is going to be a 3-yard pass to a slot receiver with an intent on setting up the next play, right? Like, and there's a whole world of those things that go on and on and on and on in a football game. And Caleb's, like all young quarterbacks, figuring out that balance. We heard that all last year. You got to know when to go in the phone booth and when to just, take what's there. I do think, again, that we've talked since January, when Ryan Poles said at Ben Johnson's introductory press conference that Ben was going to challenge Caleb to be a professional football player and to understand how to do all the little things right.
Mm-hmm.
What I think you heard there was Case Keenum saying, I'm here too, and I'm going to help you with that. And I think for Ryan, that's got to be a fist pump moment of saying, yes, we've got a guy whose voice should resonate, a guy who can attach himself to Caleb's hips when the or hip, we'll just attach to one hip here, while the coaches are off handling other business, and is able to provide some of that push and that challenge and that guidance that a young quarterback needs. Look, like Case said several times on several different topics yesterday, I could talk all day about that. We only had 15 minutes with him. And I suggested to one of the Bears PR staffers later in the day, I said, why don't we just have a day where Caleb just talks, or where Case just talks all day about all the topics that he threatened to talk all day about? I would sit down for that.
I mean, it sounds like
Wednesday in July.
Be a bit more valuable than some of the assistants, maybe. I mean, at this point, a guy who obviously, it seems like when I hear all that, Ben Johnson, like that hour-long conversation they supposedly had, it's like that there's some real, like, this is what you're here for. We may not see you on the field. Like, well, we're going to pay you to be here, and really, because he's like spouting stuff about marrying up with the play caller. And I get, like, Case knows all that from his multiple stops in the league. That is part of it. But even hearing that's him speaking on behalf of the coach, you have got to, like, be one with Ben Johnson, which we've heard through the years, but I don't think it was ever accomplished with the predecessors here for Caleb Williams in terms of marrying up the play caller.
Keenum certainly has an ability to talk ball at an advanced level that's going to be fun to tap into at the moments that we're allowed to tap into it. And it's going to be a fun journey that they go on here in this process together. He's part of this now, right? And I did appreciate the fact that he had high praise for Tyson Bagent as well, even as they are competing for the backup role, because Ben opened that door yesterday and saying, look, like, neither one of those guys has put their name in Sharpie on the second line of the depth chart, and we're going to let that competition play out, and we're going to get into preseason and see what that looks like. That's going to be fun to watch as those guys battle a little bit, but there's been high praise for Bagent. But Keenum also said, hey, look, like, I've been around a little bit. I'm going to come in here and try to compete. I've been competing my whole life, while also understanding that QB2 role has some servant responsibilities to it, which I think he is more than accustomed to handling.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Dan, what about, as I said, I unfortunately was not there for the OTA because I had other duties, other responsibilities, but you were on the field. I believe they practice outdoors on fields 1 and 2. What did you observe that we can, of relevance that actually matters out there?
Yeah, I'll bullet point these in no specific order. The first thing is there was several defensive starters missing from Wednesday's practice. Jalen Johnson among them. He was just absent. Assume he's back in California, as he typically is at this time of year. Kyler Gordon and TJ Edwards, 2 guys who just signed extensions, dealing with soft tissue stuff. That's something to keep an eye on for all 3 days of the veteran mandatory minicamp next week. The Bears will obviously be very conservative with injuries to veterans and veteran starters that they've paid a lot of money to. But it is worth noting that Kyler Gordon has missed time in all 3 of his seasons, right? And so he has not been 100% available, 100% durable. So keep an eye on that injury as we go forward. There were some moments for Caleb that were a little bumpy. Routes on air session missing badly on some throws to DJ Moore Olamide Zacchaeus and Roma Dunze. That's got to get cleaned up as we get further along. Again, these are observations. They're not conclusions. There's nothing to them. Just letting people know what we saw. And then obviously something that we've been talking about for several weeks. Ozzy Trapillo,
yeah, whatever.
Zapillo, tomato,
yeah.
tomato, took almost all of the first team reps at left tackle.
Okay.
So we're only in week 2 of OTAs, and already the Bears are pushing the rookie second-round pick into action in a way that tests him, challenges him, and can give them an idea of how he fits there. Ben did say after practice that his preference in an ideal world is to keep Darnell Wright on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
When followed up about whether that meant that Darnell Wright was definitely the week 1 starting right tackle, he said TBD.
Yeah.
So, there will come some times where Darnell will go over to left and they'll figure out what that looks like. But I think in an ideal world, if Trapillo can lock that down, that's option A. Karan Amagaji would be B, and then if you have to move some pieces around, then you would introduce Darnell Wright on the left side. But
and what, Braxton Jones a backup?
Right, I guess we just don't know. That's a good question. That's a really good follow-up question. I guess we just don't know what the health of Braxton Jones is going to look like. It sounds like he's going to be out into the early parts of training camp at a minimum, coming back from that season-ending ankle injury he suffered in December that required surgery. So yeah, Braxton Jones's status is a little bit of an asterisk on this whole situation. And until we see him healthy, practicing and available for several weeks at a time, you have to be kind of working under the assumption that position is open to be taken.
Yep. And that's where, all of this stuff is great, but training camp is where it's going to be at. That's when we will see it come together. And we have to keep in mind too, that they have made a point out of, as most teams will do, it's not necessarily unique. They want to make sure they want to know who their starting 5 is going to be sooner than later. And the advantages to that are obvious. So they're going to tinker with it. Training camp's going to be where it's at, and Take the North is where it's at, man. This has been another episode. 342 was fantastic. And thanks to everybody for listening and watching. For my guy, Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune, read his articles on Tribune.com, or just go to the store, buy yourself a Chicago Tribune and read Dan Wiederer, because he's got great stuff every single day. Well, not every day, but a lot of the days in the Chicago Tribune. Thank you to our executive producer, Adam Sidzinski, and getting all that audio for us. We appreciate you. For those two guys, I am Mark Grote. Again, thank you for watching and listening to the Take the North podcast.
Great talk. See you out there.